The story continues as the situation inside the volcanic chamber turned absolutely critical as the massive hell flower of nightmares fully bloomed, flooding the cavern with dangerous pulsating light. The players were thrown into complete chaos as a crimson bar materialized above their heads, displaying the nightmare status effect. Panic spread rapidly as the elite players realized something was terribly wrong. A nervous Wang Mang explained the devastating reality of their situation to Little Black. Players trapped in the nightmare state could not be revived or log off the game, meaning death here resulted in permanent consequences. This revelation completely crushed the group's morale. They were trapped with a diamond-grade boss in a zone where their lifespan drained 10,000 times faster than normal. Just as despair began overwhelming everyone, a party invitation from Shadow appeared unexpectedly, surprising the entire group. Shadow stood with his back turned to them, his cape flowing dramatically. He calmly assured the terrified group that since he had personally gathered them here, he absolutely would not let them perish. He turned his head slightly, his eye glowing with power, and commanded them to follow his instructions precisely. He promised that if they obeyed exactly as he directed, they would defeat the boss successfully. Realizing this was their only remaining hope, the Knights Templar Guild leader and the others nodded in firm agreement. A system list populated rapidly as all the elite players accepted the invitation, including Dongfang Yui, An Xuan, Xiao, and Zhang Yaoying. With their trust placed entirely in him, the crowd cheered enthusiastically for Big Brother Shadow. Shadow immediately began issuing tactical commands. He turned to the witch, Zhang Yaoying, and ordered her to activate Soul Link. She saluted playfully and used her giant brush to paint a massive magical rune floating in the air. The spell activated instantly, and dark purple chains of energy shot outward, connecting the souls of all party members together. As the chains attached securely, Shadow explained the crucial mechanic. The Soul Link shared their collective resistances among everyone. He revealed the strategy was to utilize this link to delay the nightmare gauge accumulation. This was precisely why he had required players who had completed their first-class advancement. Only they possessed the hidden resistance stat needed to withstand the nightmare effect. The group finally understood his incredible foresight. The battle commenced as the Hellflower unleashed thorny vines, which immediately wrapped around several players, trapping them completely. Shadow warned the team sternly that if anyone died or fell into the nightmare state, the boss would consume them to heal itself. He ordered them to prioritize survival above all else and immediately revive anyone who fell in combat. Taking full command, Shadow explained the boss possessed 36 million hit points and 3 distinct phases. In this first phase, the flower had 6 vines, and he had assigned a specific team to handle each one individually. He singled out An Xuan specifically, assigning him to handle an entire vine by himself alone. An Xuan was surprised but clearly pleased when Shadow praised his exceptional skills. The battle erupted violently as the vines lashed out with incredible speed. True to his renowned reputation, An Xuan dodged the attack perfectly with flawless timing and unleashed a skill called Moonshadow against a vine. However, Wang Mang and the Knights Templar Guild leader were shocked to see a damage number of only -250. They panicked immediately, wondering why the damage output was so pathetically low. Shadow then calmly revealed a crucial detail they hadn't known. In the first phase, the boss possessed a 90% damage reduction shield protecting it. The team fell into despair, questioning how they could possibly fight under these impossible conditions. Ignoring their panic completely, Shadow leaped high into the air, activating Blessing of Release combined with instant Shadow Slash. A massive beam of blue energy slammed into the boss with tremendous force, dealing a staggering 666,666 damage despite the protective shield. Shadow remarked that this was precisely how they had to fight this battle. He followed up immediately with a throat cut technique, landing another devastating critical hit for over 630,000 damage. The Knights Templar Guild leader screamed in absolute shock, unable to believe the damage numbers appearing. Shadow explained the tactical strategy clearly. If the vines had no target to attack, the boss would release a devastating area of effect attack that would instantly kill everyone present. Reassured by his overwhelming power, the elite players shouted their obedience. The Hellflower unleashed its remaining vines simultaneously, filling the entire cave with thorns. The raid team tensed up immediately, raising shields and weapons as they prepared for the vicious assault. Shadow moved to intercept the attack, striking the first vine with overwhelming force. He leaped into the air and unleashed a flurry of rapid slashes, shredding the vines apart one by one and protecting the team with his raw power alone. However, Little Black got completely distracted. Instead of focusing on defense, she stared at Shadow with pure admiration, cheering about how handsome he was and marveling at his incredible damage. Her lack of focus cost her dearly, as a vine sneaked past her guard and wrapped around her body. She was hoisted into the air, screaming desperately for help. Shadow reacted instantly, appearing behind the vine with blinding speed. With a single slash of blue energy, he cut it cleanly in half. He caught Little Black as she fell, saving her life and dealing a final devastating blow to the vine. With Phase 1 cleared successfully, he stood over the recovering Little Black and scolded her sternly, warning her to stop daydreaming or she would die next time. Humiliated and in pain, Little Black sobbed and apologized profusely. With the first phase cleared, the Hellflower began pulsating violently. A player spotted something stirring deep within its fiery petals and shouted for the others to look immediately. From the flower's center, a humanoid silhouette emerged wreathed in flames. The raid team stared in complete shock as a beautiful woman with long fire-like hair and glowing eyes rose from the monster's core. Some players were briefly distracted by her appearance before remembering the mortal danger they were in. The boss's new form attacked aggressively, launching 3 large orbs of fiery energy. Shadow shouted a warning, announcing the second phase had begun. He explained the 3 orbs were condensed nightmare energy and would randomly lock onto 3 players as targets. Shadow explained that if anyone made contact with an orb, their nightmare gauge would instantly increase by 10%, and the orb would split into 2 separate orbs. His warning was interrupted abruptly as an orb struck a player directly. Just as Shadow had predicted accurately, it split into 2 new orbs that flew off in different directions, causing the players to panic wildly. Shadow calmly instructed everyone not to panic under any circumstances. As the orbs moved at a slow pace, he ordered targeted players to kite the orbs away from the main group while the others dealt with the reappearing vines. He then added a critical strategic detail. In this phase, the boss's damage reduction had dropped to 50%. With the strategy established clearly, Shadow told the team to handle the mechanics properly while he charged forward to engage the main body of the boss himself directly. Shadow descended from the sky, targeting the Hellflower's human form. He decided this diamond-grade boss was the perfect opponent to test his full offensive firepower. Shadow activated his Shadow of Slaughter skill, summoning dark clones around him. 5 figures, Shadow and his 4 clones, descended upon the boss simultaneously, surrounding her from all angles. Together, they unleashed the Crimson Blade ultimate technique. The attack created a massive pillar of red energy, dealing 4 separate hits of over 1.5 million damage each. Shadow immediately followed up with a throat cut, inflicting a massive bleeding debuff on the boss. Shadow retreated briefly to assess the damage output. He noted that even with the boss's 50% damage reduction, his burst combo had dealt nearly 6 million damage total. He realized his Crimson Blade dealt progressively more damage as the enemy's health decreased, calculating he only needed a few more attack cycles to kill it. Suddenly, Shadow froze completely, sensing a disaster unfolding behind him. His eyes widened as he turned away from the boss. Behind him, the battlefield was in absolute chaos. The number of nightmare orbs had multiplied uncontrollably, filling the air completely. Wang Mang desperately screamed for anyone targeted by an orb to run from the crowd to prevent more splitting. Players ran desperately for their lives as the red orbs chased them relentlessly. The panic shattered their formation entirely as fleeing players ran blindly toward teams fighting the vines. The defenders shouted at them to stay away urgently, but the situation was spiraling completely out of control. Shadow looked down and discovered a hidden mechanic. When the boss's vine struck an orb, the orb gained a 3-second speed boost, making it impossible for players to dodge successfully. Realizing the team couldn't hold out much longer, Shadow gritted his teeth hard. He shouted for them to hold on just a moment longer. He calculated he needed exactly 5 seconds to force the boss into its third phase. Shadow focused intensely, his eyes glowing with determination as he prepared his burst rotation. He internally complained about stacking so many buffs simultaneously as he activated Silent Concealment and Dark Depth to boost his stealth and damage output. He then activated the Blacklight Shield, increasing his attack power by another 30%. Finally, he used Shadow of Slaughter, summoning clones that inherited all his current buffs completely. With his preparations complete, Shadow leaped forward with blinding speed. He unleashed his modified skill, Instant Shadow Slash. He and his clones blurred together, striking simultaneously. The area filled with blue energy slashes as the system registered a staggering 216 hits within a split second. Shadow shouted that he was not finished yet. He and his clones unleashed the Crimson Blade Ultimate. For massive pillars of red energy slammed into the boss with tremendous force, tearing through her defenses. The boss's human form vomited green blood, severely wounded. Shadow followed up immediately with a throat cut for a critical blow, dealing over 18 million damage to the monster. Nearby, the other players watched in horror and awe. While they struggled to deal a few hundred damage, they wondered if Shadow was even human after dealing 20 million damage in a single devastating wave. The boss reeled backward, convulsing violently in pain. The giant flower stalk began to twist and turn a dark purple color, and Shadow warned the team that the boss had entered Phase 3. The boss screamed in a mixture of agony and rage, her form becoming wild and unstable as she prepared her final attacks. The cave transformed to a deep, ominous purple hue, drastically shifting the battle's atmosphere. Wang Mang looked up in terror as the vines wove together, forming massive twisted wooden pillars that erupted violently from the ground. Shadow immediately identified the threat and shouted orders. He explained the pillars functioned as magnets for the nightmare orbs. He warned that for every orb a pillar absorbed, the boss would recover 10% of its health. He commanded the team to destroy the pillars to prevent the monster from healing itself. He explained the new rules of Phase 3 clearly. The red orbs no longer multiplied, but they were far deadlier than before. Shadow warned that touching an orb now would instantly force a player into the nightmare state. Worse still, if a player was already in that state, the orb would transform into nightmare bugs that feasted on lifespan until the victim died permanently. The soldiers looked at the orbs with genuine fear, realizing a single mistake meant permanent death. Shadow's eyes narrowed behind his mask. He screamed at the team to concentrate and avoid the orbs, urging them to hold the line for just 10 more seconds. Internally, he calculated the path to victory. The boss had less than 10 million health remaining, and his skills needed only 3 more seconds to cool down completely. Shadow knew one more full-power instant Shadow Slash would be sufficient to eliminate it. The situation deteriorated rapidly as a scream tore through the battlefield. Shadow turned, shocked to witness a player's nightmare gauge completely fill to maximum, his eyes glowing red with madness. Wang Mang screamed in horror as he watched a teammate fall. He yelled that someone in their squad had succumbed to the nightmare state. The player collapsed, writhing in agony as a red orb hovered ominously over him. Gruesomely, the red orb sank into the player's body. The transformation was instant and horrifying. The player's body burst open as hundreds of red nightmare bugs erupted from his flesh, devouring him from the inside out. The system confirmed the player, Summer Horse, had lost all lifespan and died a permanent death. The terrified guild leader ran blindly in panic. Wang Mang tried to shout at him to stop running wildly, but fear had taken complete control. He realized too late the guild leader had led an orb directly to a wooden pillar. The guild leader apologized helplessly as the pillar's vines snatched the orb. The pillar immediately absorbed the orb, channeling energy into the boss. The Hellflower regenerated a massive 3.6 million health for each absorbed orb. Shadow watched helplessly as the boss's health climbed rapidly. He realized the situation was spiraling beyond his control. He noted that everyone's nightmare gauge was reaching its critical limit and that this was his final opportunity. He grimly calculated that if the boss recovered over 20 million health, he wouldn't have sufficient damage to kill it. Sweat poured down Shadow's face as he stared at his own interface. In the chaotic battle, players panicked, screaming to dodge the red orbs that threatened permanent death. The team attacking the pillars cracked under immense pressure, shouting they couldn't hold on as their nightmare gauges reached critical levels. Shadow watched the scene spiral out of control, grimly knowing the team would be completely wiped out if this continued. He knew he could escape alone using his boots' phasing effect, but hesitated, knowing everyone else would be doomed. Suddenly, a sword was raised high. Wang Mang stepped forward and activated Holy Barrier for 7 seconds of complete invincibility. With glowing eyes, he yelled for Shadow to focus exclusively on damaging the boss, promising to handle the defense himself. Shadow was startled by the tank's sudden resolve and questioned his plan. Wang Mang didn't hesitate for a moment. He activated Speed Blessing and charged into the field of red orbs. Little Black watched in shock as Wang Mang used his invincible body to collide with the orbs, preventing them from healing the boss. Captain Anyu screamed at Wang Mang, warning him he was being reckless. She explained that while the shield stopped the damage, his nightmare gauge was still filling, and once his invincibility ended, the nightmare bugs would instantly devour him. Wang Mang smiled peacefully, saying he knew the cost, but had to do it because it was the only way to achieve victory. As he rushed toward his death, Wang Mang declared that he trusted Shadow completely to lead them to victory. Captain Anyu agreed with the desperate plan, her eyes glowing. She activated Symbiotic Dragon Spirit, summoning a massive blue dragon linked to her life force. With a swing of her sword, she commanded the dragon to devour the deadly nightmare orbs. Because her life was linked to the dragon, the corruption affected her instantly. Her nightmare gauge hit maximum, and she vomited blood, enduring the curse so Shadow didn't have to. At that moment, Wang Mang's invincibility ran out, leaving him vulnerable to permanent death. Soon, Wang Mang knelt on the ground, glowing with a golden aura. Little Black screamed, realizing Anyu and Wang Mang were using their bodies to absorb the orbs to buy Shadow time, and she rallied the team to join them. The other players rushed forward, using their bodies to intercept the red orbs, knowing they might survive if Shadow killed the boss quickly enough. Anshuan, the swordsman, smiled confidently as orbs hit him, declaring their only job was to buy time for Shadow. Even Zhang Yaoying, the witch, laughed in the face of death, standing with the others. A support player realized that since they were entering the nightmare state anyway, they should use their final moments to buff Shadow. He cast a blessing and shouted for everyone to use their skills on their leader. The other mages immediately complied, casting every buff they had onto Shadow. He stood amidst the chaotic energy, fully buffed and crackling with blue lightning, as his teammates screamed for him to kill the boss and pull them from the nightmare. Shadow watched his teammates sacrifice themselves with amusement and determination, muttering they were a reckless bunch. His body overflowed with the massive energy his team had poured into him. Shadow immediately activated a cascade of skills: Silent Concealment, Deepest Darkness, Shield of Black Light, Shadow of Slaughter, and Grace of Release. With his power at its absolute peak, he pointed a finger at the boss, issuing the final command. His dark clones materialized, encircling the Hell Flower of Nightmares. They unleashed a synchronized barrage of attacks, creating a vortex of purple slashes that shredded the boss's petals and registered 216 hits instantly. Shadow stood amidst the energy, his cape flowing dramatically. He leaped high into the air, positioning himself above the weakened monster. He descended like a meteor toward the flower's center, his eyes glowing with lethal intensity. A massive vertical slash bisected the boss, cutting through the flower and space itself. The monster exploded into a swirling vortex of energy. The twisted red pillars of the nightmare realm crumbled as the boss's influence faded completely. A system window materialized, announcing the party had achieved the global first kill of a diamond-grade boss. Below, Captain Anyu and Wang Mang lay exhausted but alive, surrounded by green healing flames as the nightmare ended. Anshuan and Zhang Yaoying cheered enthusiastically, celebrating their hard-won success. Captain Anyu complained the curse had drained 10 years of her lifespan, but Wang Mang comforted her, saying it was a small price for survival, and proved that trusting Shadow was the correct choice. As the boss dissipated, golden loot orbs rained down. A greedy player jumped for the treasure, but others shouted at him to stop, insisting Shadow should distribute it. However, Little Black looked around, realizing their leader had vanished. The team called out, asking where Shadow had gone. He contacted them through voice chat, telling them to wait for him because his business was not yet finished. The team was confused, pointing out the boss was dead. Shadow appeared in the distance, shrouded in purple energy, and coldly confirmed that while the monster was dead, the people who deserved to die were still alive. He rode his skeletal dragon Osiris into the sky. He was hunting Theodore, who had already boarded a plane to flee back to Country M. Despite the immense distance, Shadow chased the plane high into the atmosphere, refusing to let the traitor escape. Theodore's earlier prophecy echoed, mocking the situation. The flower blooms as expected. You are the only lucky one. The invisible path in the sky will lead you back to your long-lost hometown. High in the night sky, Shadow pursued the airplane on his skeletal dragon Osiris. He had consumed over 3,500 years of tradable lifespan to synchronize his game abilities with reality, allowing him to bring his stats, equipment, and his epic grade mount into the real world. With the dragon's immense speed, he finally caught up to the aircraft. Shadow leaped from the dragon's back, diving through the high-altitude winds and landing firmly on top of the speeding jet. He stood up, his eyes glowing yellow as dark energies surged around him, ready for his revenge. Inside the plane, the atmosphere was celebratory. 2 champagne glasses clinked together in a toast. Theodore and Mei Jing smiled at each other. Mei Jing congratulated him on his return to his hometown in Country M, looking satisfied. Theodore welcomed Mei Jing and Tony as official members of Country M. As Mei Jing politely asked Theodore to look after them, Tony sat nearby looking at his phone. He laughed maliciously, wanting to check the news to see if the great Xia pigs had all died yet. Tony checked his phone, but his expression shifted from mockery to pure shock. His hands trembling, he showed the others the impossible headline. Shadow's team had not only survived, but had secured the first kill on the diamond-grade boss with almost no casualties. Mei Jing and Tony stared in disbelief, their jaws dropping as the reality of Shadow's power shattered their arrogance. Theodore was so shaken that his hand went limp, and his wineglass slipped and shattered on the floor, spilling red wine like blood. He stammered, unable to comprehend how anyone could survive the nightmare. Sitting in the dark cabin, Theodore frantically reviewed his prophecy, realizing with horror that he had interpreted it wrong. The true meaning of the omen of the star god clicked into place. He realized the pitiful ones were not Shadow's team, but his own subordinates. His gaze shifted to Tony and Mei Jing, and a cold chill ran down his spine as he understood the final line. You are the only lucky one. If he was the only survivor, they were already doomed. As if summoned by his fear, Theodore looked past them and saw a nightmare come to life. Outside the plane's window, the masked face of Shadow appeared, his glowing yellow eyes staring directly at Theodore. Theodore screamed, pointing a trembling finger at the window and yelling that Shadow was outside. Tony, confused by his boss's breakdown, pressed his face to the glass to look. He turned back, puzzled, saying there was nothing out there but the empty sky, unaware death was inches away. Theodore stared at his phone in terror, confirming to his panicked subordinates that Shadow had indeed tracked them down. Tony, putting the pieces together, screamed that Shadow must have extracted the skeletal dragon into the real world. Theodore realized extracting an epic-grade mount would cost over 1,000 years of lifespan, a terrifying price. Mei Jing broke down in tears, convinced they were doomed. However, Theodore forced himself to think rationally, pointing out this was a civilian flight full of passengers. He reasoned that if Shadow tried to break in, the plane would be destroyed, killing everyone. With renewed confidence, Theodore declared that Shadow would never dare to kill innocent civilians, meaning they were safe until landing. He then revealed his ace. He had already contacted reinforcements. At the airport in Country M, a squad of elite-powered individuals was gathering. On the ground, a cybernetic soldier received the message that Shadow was arriving. The elite operatives, including a woman with white hair and a hooded figure, entered a state of combat readiness. 2 other agents confirmed the mission parameters had changed. A massive magic circle illuminated the sky above the airport, with the objective set to eliminate Shadow the instant he landed. High in the air, Theodore believed they simply needed to wait. He reassured Mei Jing and Tony that Country M never abandons its citizens. Relieved, Mei Jing thanked him gratefully, and Tony pledged their loyalty, completely unaware their safety was merely an illusion. Theodore's thoughts revealed his ruthless nature. While maintaining a calm facade, he knew Tony and Mei Jing's deaths were already destined, and he believed himself to be the sole lucky survivor. He planned his escape, recalling he had special cards distributed to informants. He would give a card to someone on the plane so he could use his Dark Star boundary skill to swap positions with them if danger approached, ensuring his own survival. Theodore stood and walked down the aisle, scanning the passengers to locate a suitable scapegoat. He stopped next to a young man wearing red headphones, who looked up in confusion as Theodore greeted him. Theodore held out a golden card, lying that it would grant the passenger powerful buffs. However, just as he extended his hand, a burst of black energy erupted from the shadows. The young man screamed. Theodore watched in shock as his subordinates died before his eyes. Chaos erupted as terrified passengers screamed. Glowing red hell flowers, spider lilies, bloomed from the victims' bloody necks, a sign of a powerful skill at work. Theodore froze, sweat pouring down his face, realizing with horror that it was Shadow. He looked down at the seat. Tony and Mei Jing's corpses had vanished, leaving only bloodstains and the red flowers. Driven by the instinct to survive, Theodore decided he could not hesitate. He prepared to activate his Dark Star boundary skill, telling himself that even if the mission failed, his priority was to live. However, before he could trigger the teleport, a sharp sound cut through the air. Theodore froze as his vision filled with blood. His right arm, holding the escape card, was sliced off at the wrist. He screamed in agony as his severed hand flew into the air. As the hand fell, Shadow caught it. He stood directly behind the terrified traitor, holding the severed limb. With glowing yellow eyes, Shadow mocked Theodore, assuring him he would indeed return to Country M. He explained the Great Xia philosophy that fallen leaves return to their roots, implying he would send Theodore's corpse back home. Shadow's gaze sharpened. He leaned in closer, instructing the mutilated man to deliver a message for him before he died. The horrifying meaning of Theodore's prophecy was finally revealed in its complete truth. In a dark room far away, the lifeless bodies of Chu Kunshin and Zuma lay motionless on a bed, having suffered the fatal consequences of being dragged into the nightmare zone. Ethereal red spider lilies bloomed hauntingly around their corpses, mocking Theodore's foolish belief that he was the only lucky one destined to survive. Back on the airplane, Shadow delivered his final lethal strike without hesitation. He plunged his hand deep into Theodore's chest and ripped out his still-beating heart. Theodore's face was frozen in absolute shock as he stared at Shadow, a massive bloody hole gaping in his chest, fulfilling his prophecy in the most gruesome way imaginable. Instantly killed, Theodore's body dropped heavily to its knees and collapsed face first onto the airplane aisle with a sickening thud. As a terrified passenger watched in horror, Theodore's blood unnaturally spread across the floor in deliberate patterns, spelling out Shadow's final chilling message to his enemies. Fallen leaves must return to their roots. Outside, the airplane continued its flight smoothly through the dark night sky, completely undisturbed by the carnage within. Having completed his brutal mission, Shadow used his dark abilities to phase through the solid roof of the aircraft into the freezing cold night air above. Standing calmly atop the speeding plane with perfect balance, a blue ghostly aura surrounded his boots. He remarked internally on how practical his special boots were, having used their formless effect to bypass the plane's physical structure entirely. Without a moment's hesitation, Shadow leaped backward into the empty air behind him. Free-falling through the darkness, he dropped with precision onto the back of his massive skeletal dragon Osiris waiting below. Together, they dove away from the jet, descending rapidly into the night. As the airplane approached the glowing advanced cityscape of Country M in the distance, it prepared for its final descent toward the airport. Unbeknownst to the innocent passengers inside, a massive military operation was waiting on the ground below. A commander orchestrated the elaborate ambush from a control room, barking orders and directing all units to their designated positions. The entire airport was heavily locked down in preparation. Magical barriers and anti-stealth detection fields were activated across the perimeter, and devastating magical attacks were primed and ready to fire the moment the aircraft descended. The instant the plane's landing gear touched the tarmac, the ground forces were positioned and ready for immediate combat. An entire army of cloaked assassins, skilled snipers, and heavily shielded knights waited in the shadows, all given strict orders to annihilate Shadow at any cost. Inside the cabin, ordinary passengers remained completely oblivious to the deadly trap that awaited them. A young man with red headphones looked out the window naively, wondering aloud if Country M was always this intensely welcoming to arriving flights. Once the plane was docked at the gate, the cabin doors opened and an armed agent stepped inside cautiously. However, as he and his partner looked down the blood-stained aisle, their determined expressions turned to complete shock. They found Theodore's dead body sprawled on the floor and frantically reported back through their comms that he was dead, noting the terrifying message left written in his own blood. The leader of the ambush force, a dark-haired man with glowing red eyes, furiously read the bloody message stating that anyone who offended Great Xia would be hunted down relentlessly. He angrily realized this was Shadow's doing and that their target had already struck and escaped. Desperate to catch their elusive target, a masked ninja agent asked a nearby, which urgently, if the anti-stealth barriers had picked up any traces of Shadow's presence. Assuming Shadow must still be hiding inside, the witch checked her magical detection system carefully, but confirmed no invisible entities had been detected anywhere. Realizing the grim truth of the situation, the leader noted their anti-stealth barrier was calibrated at level 20, leading him to the terrifying conclusion that Shadow's stealth abilities must have been at an even higher tier, allowing him to completely evade their sophisticated trap. Despite the obvious presence of innocent civilians still on board, a white-haired mage commander declared the threat level had escalated to S-class and ordered all units to open fire immediately. A masked subordinate hesitated, pointing out that passengers were still inside the aircraft, but the commander angrily slammed his staff down hard, demanding absolute obedience to his orders. He insisted Shadow was hiding inside and ordered an immediate full-power assault on the plane. Instantly, a massive barrage of magical projectiles and concentrated lasers was unleashed from the airport terminal. Inside the plane, the young man with headphones and another passenger looked out the window in growing terror, realizing too late they were under attack. The devastating magical strike streaked across the tarmac toward the defenseless airliner at tremendous speed. Finally, a colossal sun-like spell was called down from above, resulting in a massive fiery explosion that completely obliterated the airplane in seconds. As the flames raged violently, consuming everything, a scout reported through the chaos that the life detection barrier sensed no living beings remaining in the smoking wreckage. The red-eyed ambush leader stood silently watching the raging inferno while a bald, muscular man and another official approached him from behind. The bald man angrily confronted the leader, warning him sharply that Great Xia would not ignore the blatant murder of their civilians and that flights between the two countries would be suspended indefinitely. Throwing his arms up in sheer frustration, the bald man complained bitterly that his long-term plan to use civilian flights to smuggle spies into Great Xia was now completely ruined, making it impossible to stop their enemy's growing power. The leader turned slowly and glared at the bald man coldly, calling him a pathetic coward. He questioned how they could ever hope to oppose a nation with Shadow on its side if they lacked the ruthless resolve necessary for victory. With his red eye glowing fiercely, he emphasized the harsh truth that death in this world was permanent and irreversible. Standing before the massive wall of fire consuming the wreckage, the red-eyed leader justified his extreme methods without remorse, stating that if Shadow had truly been on that plane, this was the perfect opportunity to eliminate him permanently. He firmly believed even a fraction of a chance to kill Shadow was worth sacrificing the plane and everyone on board without hesitation. The tension among the Country M forces boiled over dangerously. The bald man glared furiously at the leader, confronting him directly and declaring he had never trusted him. He then commanded the leader to be quiet, insulting him viciously for being a half-breed with Great Xia blood running through his veins. Before the bald man could react or defend himself, the red-eyed leader struck with blinding speed, delivering a brutal punch directly to the man's face. The sheer force sent the large, muscular man flying backward through the air like a ragdoll. Enveloped in crackling golden energy, the leader exposed his dark motivations to everyone present. He declared his intense hatred for his great Xia bloodline, calling it a curse that brought him constant despair throughout his life, but defended his absolute loyalty to Country M. The scene then shifted to the retrieval of their fallen comrade. Two agents, including the white-haired mage commander, approached the red-eyed leader, carrying Theodore's lifeless, mutilated body between them. They unceremoniously dropped Theodore's corpse onto the floor with a heavy thud. The red-eyed leader knelt solemnly beside Theodore's body as a mysterious purple and golden aura surrounded him. He told the fallen man to rest in peace, honoring him as a hero of Country M and promising to return him to his hometown for proper burial. Standing back up slowly, the red-eyed leader's terrifying power was revealed to all. He held 3 glowing blue cards that manifested from his hands, unveiling his hidden class, the Corpse Collector, an ability that allowed him to extract power directly from the dead. Looking at the glowing magical cards floating in his palm, he coldly praised Theodore's massive contributions and the vast network of spies he had successfully planted throughout Great Xia. A system notification explained that touching a corpse granted him their professional skills, and acquiring duplicate skills leveled them up progressively. Holding one of the glowing blue cards, his single red eye glowing with malice, empowered by his fallen comrade's stolen skills, the red-eyed leader made a chilling final vow to personally ensure the complete and absolute destruction of Great Xia. The story continues as the red-eyed leader raised his arm high, holding the glowing blue card as radiant light surrounded him. He used his newly acquired divinatory skill to find a way to defeat Shadow. A cosmic vision of a mother desperately trying to save her falling child from a starry abyss appeared before him, making the leader reflect on how to exploit this maternal connection against his enemy. Meanwhile, 2 of his subordinates, including the white-haired mage, discussed the intelligence left behind by Theodore. They deduced that a guild in Great Xia named Fika Heavy Industries, its leader Huang Huifan, and her son Huang Xing matched the clues from the prophecy perfectly. The red-eyed leader confirmed this analysis, explaining that one of Theodore's informants was embedded inside that guild and possessed a special card. A holographic map materialized, showing his plan to use the Dark Star Boundary skill to instantly swap locations with the informant, allowing him to infiltrate Great Xia completely undetected. The red-eyed leader summoned another glowing blue card. He handed these magical cards to the white-haired mage and his partner, ordering them to keep them safe and not use them under any circumstances. He announced he would go to Great Xia alone first, telling his subordinates to wait for his signal. He promised to use his power to mass teleport Country M's elite forces into enemy territory later. Staring at the glowing card with red scars glowing on his abdomen, the leader vowed to prove Country M would conquer the entire apocalyptic game. He activated the spatial skill, and a massive pillar of blue light erupted around him as he vanished. In the leader's place, another man suddenly appeared, squatting awkwardly with a roll of toilet paper in hand. The man stammered that he was in the bathroom, but an agent calmly told him not to be nervous. Addressing him as Theodore's friend, the agent welcomed him to Country M, leaving the young man shocked by his sudden relocation. Inside the Nightmare Hellflower boss area, the surviving team members waited after the brutal battle. A digital blue light materialized and Shadow logged back into the game. The players noticed him immediately, and one excitedly announced his return. The Knights Templar Guild leader smiled warmly and told Shadow that everyone had followed his orders precisely, not touching any loot so he could collect it himself. Shadow extended his hand, which crackled with yellow energy, and thanked the team for their hard work, telling them to use the loot to boost their combat power. He then unleashed a powerful ability, summoning a gigantic, glowing golden fist called the Greedy Hand that struck the ground to gather all the spoils. 2 team members watched in awe, noting it would massively increase their rewards. After sorting through the items carefully, Shadow handed a glowing spatial ring to Lin Qingyu. He explained he only kept the lifespan rewards and his assassin class items, leaving the rest for her team to divide among themselves. Lin Qingyu blushed, amazed by the sheer amount of treasure contained in the ring. She then asked Shadow about Theodore and his companions. Shadow glanced back at the sealed cave entrance, his eye glowing with cold yellow light, and bluntly informed her they were all dead. Lin Xingyu gasped in shock, and before she could process it, Shadow leaped into the air, turning into a dark blur. Shadow flew towards the red-lit cavern where two players struggled desperately to break down a massive stone wall. The players were frustrated, complaining they had barely chipped away 10% of the wall's health. Suddenly, the axe-wielding player looked back in shock as blue energy streaked past. Shadow landed, and a flurry of his blue slashes shattered the stone wall completely. Without a word, he walked into the newly opened red tunnel, casually waving his hand to dismiss the stunned players. The players stood frozen in awe, recognizing the legendary player and marveling at his incredible power. Atop his dragon, Shadow reviewed his loot from the boss. He saw he had obtained 3 treasures, including 2 legendary grade items, an ultimate skill book, a weapon, and a bracer. Pleased, he decided to immediately use his evolution points to upgrade the skill book. The system displayed his newly evolved ancient grade ultimate skill, Endless Nightmare. The skill description revealed a terrifying area of effectability that trapped enemies in a nightmare descent state, rapidly stacking a nightmare gauge on them with every attack, while a passive ability boosted his damage against afflicted targets. Shadow analyzed the skill, realizing the nightmare attribute was overpowered against other players because it prevented them from logging off. He deduced that with a blooming curse, he could permanently kill players from within the game. He visualized the curse's horrific effect, imagining a terrified player writhing as glowing red spider lilies burst from their chest. However, he noted this nightmare status could be removed using purification skills or specific items. Moving on, Shadow summoned his new weapon, a menacing glowing red and black sword that materialized in his hand. The system identified it as an assassin-class blade called the Starkiller Blade. The weapon provided massive stat boosts, high backstab damage, and a unique effect where killing other players granted stacks that increased his physical attack. It also featured a devastating bonus that dealt almost 5 times more damage to enemy shields. Holding the glowing red blade, Shadow smirked and called it a true murder weapon. He calculated that with maximum stacks combined with the backstab and shield-breaking bonuses, the weapon's power was terrifying. He also noticed a special stripping effect that nullified an enemy's attribute effects once the gauge was full. Thinking back to his recent battle, Shadow reflected that if he had this sword, then he could have easily stripped away the monster's nightmare attributes, greatly reducing its threat. Shadow inspected his new weapon and discovered a unique, humiliating feature. Any player killed by this sword received a permanent, unremovable title above their head. Amused, Shadow remarked that the weapon's nickname as a grandson maker was well-deserved. He then examined his final piece of loot, a diamond-grade bracer. Equipping it, a powerful geometric shield of golden energy formed around his body. He noted its impressive passive ability, which automatically generated a magic-blocking shield every 30 seconds. Highly satisfied with his haul, Shadow mounted his skeletal dragon Osiris and took to the orange-lit sky. He calculated that the FICA Heavy Industries Guild should have the remaining 800 years of lifespan they owed him. He decided his next destination was the Magic Leaning Tower hideout to collect his debt. Soaring over the ruined cityscape, Shadow planned to grind to level 25 to undertake a new trial using a summoning bell item. A few days prior, in the desolate, destroyed corrupted village, a group of players was ambushed. 2 players were violently pierced through the chest by sharp, bloody tentacles and screamed in agony. The source of the attack was a terrifying floating monstrosity with glowing orange eyes, a level 18 emerald grade boss. The survivors panicked, overwhelmed by the high-level monster, and yelled for everyone to run. Suddenly, a hand glowing with intense purple flames stepped in, effortlessly halting the monster. A commanding voice ordered the terrified players not to panic and to maintain their formation. The figure was Huang Xing, shrouded in a black cloak and wielding swirling purple abyssal energy. Confidently, he declared he would control the boss and ordered the team to attack, promising victory. However, the party members yelled at him to run away, reminding him it was an emerald-grade boss and mocking him for thinking he was as powerful as Shadow. Unfazed, Huang Xing smirked menacingly. His eyes glowed with a sinister purple light as he told them to watch and witness the true power of the Abyss. The party watched in shock as his dark aura exploded outward. He unleashed a massive wave of purple magic that corrupted the ground into an abyssal mire. As the dark magic spread, he arrogantly declared that while Shadow merely hid in the dark, he represented the true, overwhelming darkness of the Abyss. Huang Xing stood with his arms raised, unleashing a massive eruption of crackling purple abyssal energy from the ground. The dark magic formed an abyssal mire, completely engulfing the terrifying multi-eyed monster and severely crippling its movements. Seeing the boss monster immobilized by the dark magic, Huang Xing urgently told his party to stop hesitating and start dealing damage. Huang Huifan quickly took command, wielding her staff and ordering everyone to focus their attacks on the trapped boss. Huang Xing's corruption and Shadow's arrival. The party members unleashed a coordinated barrage of colorful magical spells and projectiles at the helpless creature. The combined magical attacks struck the boss repeatedly, inflicting significant chunks of damage. Two of the party members momentarily celebrated the massive damage output with relief. But their celebration shattered when one noticed something changing. Breaking free from the mire, the boss floated upward, gathering intense blue energy as it entered its second phase to unleash a devastating ultimate attack. Panic gripped the team as a hooded player frantically ordered everyone to activate defensive barriers against the incoming area of effect strike, while another armored player fled, screaming that barriers were useless against this attack. As the boss was about to unleash its attack, a hand radiating dark energy appeared, summoning glowing purple chains that instantly bound the monster, interrupting its ultimate skill completely. Huang Huifan and the hooded player looked on in sheer confusion, stunned that the boss's powerful attack was stopped so effortlessly. Huang Xing's voice echoed, coldly insulting the party and calling them a bunch of useless trash. Huang Xing, his eyes glowing with malevolent purple light, pointed accusingly at his mother. He mocked her for bringing cowards who only knew how to flee, completely ignoring that with him there, their victory was absolute. Laughing maniacally as his dark aura flared, Huang Xing declared he would forcefully awaken their true potential and show them the terrifying reality of FICA heavy industries. He raised his hand high, completely engulfed in swirling purple energy. Suddenly, ominous red flames began to manifest around the confused party members, catching Huang Huifan and the others off guard. The dark skill, revealed to be Abyssal Sacrifice, summoned a terrifying demonic visage as the corrupted magic forcefully took hold of the party, causing them to scream in agony while their eyes glowed with a sinister red light. The horrific spell acted as a curse from the Abyss, draining the players' lifespans to temporarily boost their attributes by 99%, driving them into a frenzied, berserk state as they charged toward the boss. Empowered by the dark buff, the team stood their ground and began a rhythmic incantation. In a flash of coordinated power, they unleashed a barrage of spells, sending torrents of elemental energy crashing upon the chained monster. Their combined overpowered assault resulted in a massive fiery explosion that rocked the battlefield and destroyed surrounding structures. As the smoke cleared, the boss monster disintegrated into particles of golden light, prompting a system notification confirming FICA Heavy Industries had successfully defeated their first emerald-grade boss. The surviving party members erupted into wild cheers and ecstatic screams, throwing their heads back in joy to celebrate their guild's massive achievement. Treating him as their undisputed hero, the ecstatic guild members chanted Huang Xing's name and triumphantly tossed him into the air while his mother watched silently from a distance. After the celebration calmed down, Huang Huifan instructed the rest to divide the loot. She then sternly ordered Huang Xing to come with her, standing beside his cousin. Obeying his mother's command, Huang Xing followed Huang Huifan and his cousin away from the main group, walking into the secluded ruins of an abandoned building. Once they were alone, Huang Huifan turned to her son, her eyes glowing with a sharp, suspicious purple light, seriously demanding that he tell her the truth about where he obtained such unusual skills. Annoyed by the interrogation, Huang Xing complained she was treating him like he had made a mistake after he had just secured a massive victory for them. Unfazed, Huang Huifan demanded he answer. Clicking his tongue defensively and avoiding eye contact, Huang Xing coldly claimed he had acquired the dark abilities as a reward for defeating a powerful boss. Staring him down with intense scrutiny, Huang Huifan bluntly called him a liar, leaving Huang Xing to look away in guilty silence. Huang Huifan's eyes glowed with intense scrutiny, pointing out that Huang Xing was a mage. She noted the dark skills weren't typical mage abilities. She revealed the devastating consequences. While they defeated the boss, his spell instantly drained 300 years of the guild's collective lifespan. Huang Huifan continued pressing him, stating the lost lifespan was meant to repay their massive debt to Shadow, insisting the cost was too steep. She demanded a full explanation. Overwhelmed and irritated, Huang Xing covered his face and snapped at her to stop. Furious, Huang Xing fiercely lashed out. He complained he had secured a massive victory, but she interrogated him like a criminal. Expressing his deep resentment over her obsession with Shadow, he declared he wouldn't be a subservient dog like she was, stating he was sick of her cowardice and wouldn't be controlled. Turning his back, Huang Xing arrogantly vowed to kill Shadow himself, claiming he would lead Fika Heavy Industries to become the top guild in Great Xia. Desperate, Huang Huifan yelled at him to stop, warning him he was too young to understand the harsh rules of survival in that apocalyptic world. The cousin stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. She gently placed a hand on Huang Xing's shoulder, pleading with him to calm down and insisting his mother was acting for his own good. Huang Xing slowly turned his head, his single eye glowing with purple malice. Huang Xing softly repeated the phrase, "For my own good," his dark glare hardening into pure murderous intent. In a sudden burst of violent rage, Huang Xing spun around and delivered a brutal punch to the girl's face, sickeningly twisting her neck. He screamed, demanding to know why his mother forced him together with such an ugly woman if she truly wanted what was best. The girl collapsed lifelessly onto the dirt path. Huang Huifan watched in absolute shock and horror, reaching out helplessly as she screamed at Huang Xing, demanding to know what he had done. Standing over her lifeless body, Huang Xing watched callously as Xiaoai dissolved into glowing golden particles. The system confirmed he had killed her, and Huang Xing let out a chilling sigh of satisfaction. Sweating slightly but resolute, his eyes still glowing with corrupt abyssal energy, Huang Xing coldly justified his horrific action by muttering that they had forced his hand. Without looking back, Huang Xing walked away into the desolate wasteland. As Xiaoai's light particles faded, Huang Huifan reached out desperately, crying out for him to stop and come back, but he completely ignored her pleas. Far away, the red-eyed leader from Country M stood over the lifeless bodies of Chu Kunshin and Zuma, his scarred hand crackling with dark red lightning as he reached out toward them. Utilizing his grim class abilities, he extracted the lingering skills from their corpses, coldly praising the acquired powers and telling his fallen subordinates to rest in peace. 3 days later, at the Fika Heavy Industries base located within the Magic Leaning Tower hideout, an armored guard with a buzz cut stood on watch duty, casually yawning out of pure boredom. Suddenly, his bored expression shifted to absolute confusion and shock as a massive shadow eclipsed the area. The colossal skeletal dragon Osiris rapidly descended from the sky amidst a swirl of purple energy. The guard screamed in sheer panic, mistaking the arrival for a giant dragon boss attack. Chaos erupted among the nearby guild members. One yelled to prepare for battle, while a cloaked member frantically shouted for everyone to drop their weapons and run. Standing calmly amidst the dark aura with glowing yellow eyes, Shadow told the panicked crowd to relax. He revealed his identity and demanded they bring out their guild leader, Huang Huifan, announcing he was there to collect his debt of 800 years of lifespan. Shocked to realize the legendary Shadow was riding the dragon, the terrified cloaked member immediately dropped to his knees in submission. He nervously apologized, informing Shadow he had come at a bad time because the guild leader was absent, which confused Shadow since they had an appointment. Still kneeling and trembling, the guild member explained that 2 days prior, Huang Huifan and her son had a severe argument. He revealed that since that conflict, neither had logged back into the game, leaving the rest of the guild completely in the dark. The story continues as the terrified guild members stammered out an explanation, revealing that their guild leader and her son had experienced a severe conflict just a few days prior, and since that explosive argument, neither of them had logged into the game. Shadow stood silently, considering this unexpected information carefully. Knowing Huang Huifen's character and how she typically kept her promises without fail, Shadow deduced she must have encountered some significant unavoidable issue in the real world to miss their carefully scheduled appointment. While Shadow was processing this, he suddenly received a system notification from one of his contacts about an urgent high-reward bounty mission that required immediate attention. The detailed message explained that remnants of the hunted Black Dragon Guild had fled desperately to the southern region of Nanu to escape pursuit. The contact went on to explain that players in the Nanu region were generally laid-back individuals who preferred a slower, more relaxed pace of gameplay compared to other areas. However, the situation had changed drastically when the fleeing remnants merged with their main headquarters located in the region and unleashed an overwhelming amount of destructive power. The resulting violence had completely overturned the entire Nanu region, causing chaos and destruction everywhere. This catastrophe had prompted the local officials to send out a distress signal specifically asking for Shadow's intervention against the purple dragon magic that was systematically destroying their city. Shadow weighed his options carefully, running through the pros and cons in his mind before accepting the mission. He noted internally that he had never actually visited the Nanu region before in this timeline. Relying on his memories from his past life, Shadow remembered that Huang Huifen would eventually lead Fika Heavy Industries to become one of the top guilds in the game, so he believed with reasonable confidence she wasn't in any immediate fatal danger. He turned to the guard and instructed him clearly to notify him the very moment Huang Huifen logged back into the game so he could return immediately to collect his debt. Shadow mounted his massive skeletal dragon Osiris with practiced ease and launched into the sky. He sent a message to his contact stating he would arrive in Nanu within an hour, which left the contact completely shocked and speechless, as this incredibly short time frame meant the dragon must be flying at supersonic speed. Meanwhile, back in the real world, a heavy downpour covered the gloomy cityscape of the magic capital in sheets of rain. A somber and worried Huang Huifen walked alone through the stormy night, desperately searching along a muddy riverbank located under a large highway bridge. After searching for what felt like hours, she finally found her son Huang Xing huddled miserably on the ground in the pouring rain, his body pressed against the cold concrete bridge support as water streamed down around him. As she slowly approached with cautious steps, Huang Xing looked down at the ground. She noticed with growing alarm that one of his eyes glowed faintly with an unnatural, corruptive blue light that shouldn't exist. Huang Huifen spoke gently, her voice soft despite the rain, asking him to please come home with her. She revealed that she had spent considerable time investigating his mysterious dark powers and discovered they originated from an abyssal item he had somehow obtained. She warned him sternly, her voice filled with maternal concern, that while the skills granted incredible strength that seemed tempting, they would gradually erode his sanity over time and eventually transform him into a mindless slave to the abyss. Huang Huifen's voice cracked with emotion as she tearfully admitted to Huang Xing that she had been ignoring his feelings for far too long. She recognized now with painful clarity that her neglect had driven him to desperately seek these dangerous shortcuts just to prove himself worthy. Reaching her hand out toward him through the rain, she made a solemn promise to respect his choices from that moment forward, vowing she would never treat him like a helpless child again or force him into relationships he didn't want. She asked him sincerely to come back home with her so they could work together to build up their guild as equal partners rather than as mother and child. Touched deeply by her words, Huang Xing looked up at her with tears streaming from his glowing purple eyes, mixing with the rainwater on his face, and softly called out to his mother. But suddenly, without any warning, a glowing green portal materialized and opened on the concrete wall behind them, and the red-eyed leader stepped through with calculated purpose. He interrupted their emotional moment deliberately, warning Huang Xing in a cold voice that returning with his mother would mean repeating the same patterns from the past and remaining trapped under her controlling influence. existing in an intangible soul walker state that made him completely immune to physical damage. The red-eyed leader asked Huang Xing a tempting question. What would he choose if someone offered him the power to make all his dreams come true? A confused and alarmed Huang Huifan whirled around and demanded to know who this mysterious intruder was, but the red-eyed leader completely ignored her presence. He focused entirely on Huang Xing, tempting him with grandiose promises. He would make their guild the absolute strongest in the magic capital, make Huang Xing the top-ranked mage in the entire game, and personally help him kill Shadow and dominate every leaderboard. Protective of her son and recognizing the danger, Huang Huifan shouted furiously that she wouldn't let some stranger deceive him with false promises. She raised her hands and summoned glowing purple magical chains from thin air, ordering the intruder to freeze in place immediately. She forcefully hurled her phantom chains at the red-eyed leader with all her power, attempting to bind him and stop his manipulation. However, the red-eyed leader simply stared coldly at the approaching attack as the chains passed completely harmlessly through his intangible body without any effect. Huang Huifan watched in absolute shock and disbelief as her most powerful attack failed to make any contact whatsoever. In a fluid motion, the red-eyed leader dropped his intangible form and became solid, then lunged forward with blinding speed and violently grabbed Huang Huifan by the head with crushing force. Using what appeared to be an epic tier warrior skill he had likely acquired from stealing it from a corpse, he performed a devastating technique called Heroic Throw, brutally slamming Huang Huifan's head into the ground with enough force to completely shatter the concrete beneath her. Standing dominantly over the injured and bleeding Huang Huifan, the red-eyed leader taunted her mercilessly, saying her pathetic level of power would never allow her to achieve any of her dreams. He then turned his attention back to Huang Xing, admitting in a manipulative tone that Huang Huifan was technically right, that the Abyssal vase gradually corrupted the minds of its users over time. However, the red-eyed leader revealed with a sly smile a crucial detail that she had deliberately omitted from her warning. The Abyssal corruption could actually be purified, leaving Huang Xing completely stunned by this revelation. Continuing his manipulation of the vulnerable boy, the red-eyed leader claimed with false sincerity that Huang Huifan had intentionally kept this purification secret just to maintain her controlling influence over him. He warned Huang Xing that he would never achieve true freedom or earn genuine respect while living under his mother's oppressive shadow. Bleeding on the cold ground and struggling to speak, Huang Huifan desperately begged Huang Xing not to listen to the stranger's lies. She admitted with a pained voice that a purification method did exist, but insisted that it absolutely needed a unique hidden class called Exorcist to perform, and she declared with certainty that the only known person with that class was dead. Suddenly, glowing red star-shaped scars appeared and manifested on the red-eyed leader's arm, igniting his entire hand with fiery red energy that crackled with power. He glared down at Huang Huifan and asked in a cold voice who exactly had told her he was dead. The red-eyed leader channeled the glowing red energy directly into Huang Xing's body, activating the exorcism skill with precise control. This powerful purification ability worked to reduce the accumulation of negative status effects, including the dangerous abyssal corruption, by exactly half their current levels. Checking his system interface with wide eyes, Huang Xing watched in amazement as his abyss corruption gauge visibly dropped, leaving him completely stunned that the purification was actually real and not a trick. Huang Huifan lay paralyzed with shock and disbelief at what she was witnessing. She stammered that it absolutely shouldn't be possible, because she had been certain the exorcist had died years ago, and she demanded to know the mysterious man's true identity. Completely ignoring her questions, an ecstatic Huang Xing clenched his fists tightly, thrilled beyond measure that the purification meant he could safely draw even more power from the abyssal item without fear of losing his mind. Huang Huifan desperately warned him through her pain that the real exorcist was a woman, which meant this man had to be a fake pretending to have those powers. The red-eyed leader told Huang Xing calmly to use his own judgment and common sense to decide what was real and what was deception. He then activated another stolen skill called Yin-Yang Harmony, specifically designed to control and manipulate Huang Xing's emotions. He leaned in close and whispered poisonous words into the boy's ear, claiming that his mother only used love as a tool to bind him and deny his true worth and potential. He urged Huang Xing directly to kill her, promising that once she was gone and dead, no one would ever control him again. He commanded Huang Xing to take the final step toward freedom, promising him absolute liberation after her death. Completely engulfed in a corruptive red aura that surrounded his body, Huang Xing reached down and picked up the knife with steady hands. From her position on the ground, a desperate Huang Huifan begged him through tears to realize he was being controlled by dark magic. Standing directly over his helpless mother's bleeding form, Huang Xing gripped the glowing blade tightly. She pleaded with everything she had for him to wake up from this nightmare and break free from the stranger's manipulative grasp. Completely deaf to her desperate cries and pleas, Huang Xing raised the knife high above his head, choosing consciously to embrace the darkness offered to him. As Huang Huifan weakly called his name one last time with fading breath, Huang Xing ruthlessly brought the weapon down without mercy. Huang Xing delivered a brutal slash that ended everything. Holding the bloody knife in his hand, he turned to face the red-eyed leader. Showing absolutely no remorse or hesitation, he demanded to know if the man would truly help him obtain everything he wanted. The leader nodded and calmly agreed to uphold his promise. Consumed entirely by the dark magic flowing through him, a deeply unsettling and maniacal smile twisted across Huang Xing's face. Thrilled by his new path forward, he told the red-eyed leader to begin their partnership and asked what they needed to do next. Huang Xing laughed with disturbing enthusiasm, standing over his mother's lifeless body while still holding the bloody knife. He asked the leader eagerly about their plan moving forward. The red-eyed leader activated one of his stolen magical cards, summoning a new divination ability. Using the stolen divination skill he had taken from Theodore's corpse, he projected a glowing red prophetic portal into the stormy sky as Huang Xing watched in complete shock. The magical spell revealed a catastrophic prophecy, a massive fiery meteor tearing violently through a crimson apocalyptic sky. The ominous prophecy warned in ancient words that the abyss would devour the heavens themselves, and a red ominous star would descend to destroy all darkness that stood in its path. Huang Xing stared at the apocalyptic vision projected in the sky, his face filled with confusion about what the prophecy actually meant. The red-eyed leader explained with chilling calmness that this catastrophic power would eventually cover all of Great Xia completely, ensuring no one could escape its reach, not even the legendary Shadow himself. Perspiring heavily, Huang Xing realized with dawning horror the terrifying implication. He could very well die in the coming cataclysm that the prophecy foretold. The red-eyed leader assured him that while the catastrophic event itself was inevitable and could not be stopped, survival depended entirely on human effort and preparation. He advised Huang Xing to aggressively expand his guild's strength, using his abyssal powers in preparation for the inevitable clash with Shadow. The red-eyed leader then manifested another glowing red card from thin air, handing it directly to Huang Xing as a parting gift. Having successfully set his pawn in motion exactly as planned, the red-eyed leader turned and walked into the misty night, promising to find Huang Xing again when the time was right for the next phase. Alone in the darkness under the bridge, Huang Xing fully embraced the corruption coursing through his veins. His eyes glowed with sinister red light as he accepted his new twisted mission. Huang Xing channeled his dark magic, extending a hand over his mother's lifeless corpse lying in the rain. He enveloped her body in swirling red abyssal energy, initiating the horrific abyssal puppet spell. The dark magic forcefully invaded Huang Huifan's dead body, causing her corpse to convulse and scream as her eyes ignited with an unnatural red glow. The necromantic skill resurrected her as an undead puppet, eternally bound to his will, but retaining all her powerful abilities from life. Standing behind his reanimated mother with cold satisfaction, Huang Xing watched as she turned and asked in a hollow voice for her master's instructions. Consumed entirely by madness, he declared with disturbing enthusiasm that they would now build their guild together, just as she had wanted. Elsewhere, far away in the southern region of Nanu, the landscape was marked by a massive tower rising prominently over the ruined city streets. True to their famously laid-back nature, the local players prioritized leisure time above all else. With a generous spread of hot dim sum and freshly brewed tea laid out before them, one player cheerfully announced it was time to stop working and take a well-deserved break. A group of players relaxed peacefully on a riverbank, fishing with their rods while reminding each other to enjoy their tea first before anything else. Their peaceful afternoon was suddenly interrupted when a massive level 18 two-headed bull boss spawned directly behind them with a deafening roar that shook the ground. Instead of showing fear, one annoyed fisherman actually yelled at the giant beast to shut up, complaining loudly that its roaring was scaring all the fish away from his line. Frustrated that the monster had rudely ruined their precious leisure time, the players calmly put down their drinks and channeled their magical auras, collectively ordering the group to charge forward. The team coordinated their attack with practiced efficiency. One player fired a freezing beam directly at one of the bull's heads, applying crowd control to prevent the monster from synchronizing its dual-casting spells. An armored warrior and a skilled mage led the assault, calling out for the armor-breaking team to target weak points while the damage dealers followed up with their heaviest attacks. They urged everyone to finish the fight quickly so they could return to their tea. The coordinated players dealt heavy damage, rapidly depleting the boss's health bar at an impressive rate. In response to being overwhelmed, the monster's eyes flared with intense fiery rage. Pushed to the brink of death, the massive beast entered a dangerous berserk state. It unleashed a massive shockwave that shattered the ground beneath it, sending a fisherman flying backward through the air. Realizing the enraged boss was now too dangerous to fight casually, the frontline players panicked and immediately ran away from the rampaging beast. As they fled in different directions, they yelled frantically for their guild leader to handle the beast since they couldn't. Answering the desperate call, a tan-skinned, white-haired young woman casually dropped her boba tea. She stepped forward with a focused glare, holding nothing but a fishing rod as her weapon. Wearing simple sandals on her feet, she leaped powerfully into the air toward the towering monster. Cursing the beast loudly for ruining their relaxing break, she expertly cast her glowing green fishing line at the giant bull with practiced precision. The magical line extended impossibly long and spiraled gracefully around the boss, quickly wrapping its entire body and completely immobilizing it in place. With a confident smirk crossing her face, the guild leader braced herself for the final strike. She yanked the fishing rod back sharply, triggering her ultimate skill. The sharp, enchanted line sliced deep into the monster's flesh, dealing a fatal blow that depleted its remaining health completely. As the guild leader landed gracefully on the ground, the system announcement declared she had successfully slain the two-headed bull. Her unique ability trapped targets first before inflicting massive damage based on their missing health percentage. The defeated boss dissolved into glowing golden loot orbs that scattered across the grass. The surrounding players erupted in enthusiastic cheers, praising Sister Hai for her perfect damage calculation and chanting their fishing-themed guild catchphrase together. Sister Hai laughed warmly, declaring it was her duty to protect the Nanu region from any threats. It was revealed through the system that she possessed a unique fishing master hidden class, an assassin variant role that used a fishing rod for ranged attacks, perfectly emphasizing their leisurely lifestyle. A guild member called out cheerfully that the tea was ready and getting cold. The group happily ran toward their tables, deliberately leaving the loot scattered on the grass to pick up later so they didn't miss their precious tea time. Smiling contentedly, Sister Hai waved and followed her team back to their peaceful break, leaving the spoils of battle completely behind for now. As the Nanu players enjoyed their tea and conversation, the glowing loot orbs remained untouched on the grass. Unbeknownst to them, a suspicious sound came from the nearby bushes. A bald, scarred man with cold blue eyes, identified as a remnant of the Black Dragon Guild, peeked out from his hiding spot. He scoffed with contempt at the Nanu Guild for abandoning such valuable loot just for a tea break and signaled his hidden men to move in and claim it. The Black Dragon members activated a level 15 group stealth skill called Shadow Veil, creating a camouflage dome around themselves as they greedily scooped up the abandoned orbs. While the Nanu players chatted peacefully about their fishing techniques, the hidden thieves snickered quietly among themselves, noting with satisfaction that this was the perfect moment to launch their attack while their target's guard was completely down. Dropping their stealth simultaneously, The Black Dragon leader, Zentil, activated a powerful buff called Boiling Blood Domain. Surrounded by a fiery red aura, he dramatically boosted his allies' attributes and ordered them viciously to slaughter the fishermen where they sat. The Black Dragon members lunged aggressively from the tall grass with weapons drawn, ambushing the completely relaxed Nanu players. Sister Hai and her guildmates were caught completely off guard, frozen in shock. Zentil raised his blade high to strike down a shocked Sister Hai and her terrified guildmate beside her. Chaos erupted instantly as attackers swung their weapons wildly, laughing maniacally and yelling for blood. The peaceful tea break was violently overturned as players screamed in terror and debris was sent flying everywhere. Standing triumphantly among the stolen loot, Zentil clenched his fists victoriously, declaring with cruel satisfaction that this brutal ambush was exactly how the pigs of Great Xia should be hunted. The violent celebration was abruptly cut short when a subordinate urgently alerted Zentil, warning him frantically of something approaching from the sky at incredibly high speed. Zentil looked up toward the sky and immediately panicked, recognizing the incoming threat as Shadow himself. Realizing with dread that the intel from Magic Capital survivors was completely true, he ordered his men desperately to recast their stealth veil immediately and retreat before it was too late. High above the city, Shadow's massive skeletal dragon Osiris plummeted from the sky, crashing heavily into the ruined city below. Standing calmly on his dragon with glowing yellow eyes, Shadow surveyed the deserted battlefield around him, wondering aloud if he had arrived too late to intervene. Seeing the uncollected loot orbs still scattered on the ground, Shadow deduced logically that the enemy forces had fled in a panic after receiving an early warning of his arrival. He was genuinely puzzled about how they had managed to detect his approach, since he had traveled the entire distance in absolute stealth mode that should have been undetectable. What do you think will happen next? This is the latest chapter of God Level Assassin. I'm the Shadow. Thank you all for your incredible support to the channel. If you enjoy our content, please consider subscribing. It really helps us grow and bring more exciting stories to you. We'll be back soon with even more thrilling episodes. Until then, stay awesome, stay safe, and cheers.